Welcome to the Daily Insider here on VegasInsider.com. I am Kevin Rogers. Today is Wednesday, September 29th, 2021, and we get set for Week 4 of the NFL. Just 1 day away, Jacksonville and Cincinnati. They will kick things off tomorrow night at Paul Brown Stadium to begin Week 4, and we'll be technically done with the first quarter of the season. I don't know about the percentages anymore. Now there's 17 games, but we'll be 4 weeks through the season after this weekend. So a lot to unfold. We'll talk with Matt Blunt, who joins us every Wednesday to look at his hot and not report. Also Total Talk as well this week. You can check those out at VegasInsider.com. Matt's going to join us coming up in just a moment. But before we bring Matt on, want to tell you about WynnBET and the $1,000 risk-free first bet that you can get when you download the app for WynnBET, of course, from the Wynn Casino out in Las Vegas, and WynnBET legal in Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, and Arizona. It must be 21 years or older to wager. When you download the WynnBET mobile sportsbook, you can get a $1,000 risk-free first bet. That means if you lose your first wager, you get it back up to $1,000 as a free bet credit that you can use for another bet. And also, if you are in New Jersey and you're going to go check the Jets out this week against the Titans, WynnBET is the official partner of the New York Jets. And you can go on site at MetLife Stadium to the WynnBET Green Room, and eligible bettors of legal age can enjoy the atmosphere of a fully fledged in-person sports book there at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. And you see the states where it's legal and must be 21 years or older to wager. So we bring on our friend, Matt Blunt, who joins us every Wednesday here on the Daily Insider. And Matt, good to see you again. And your first article, we check it out every single week, hot and not. And I find this one interesting, breaking down the home underdogs and how they have fared so far. So let's begin with this one, Matt. The hot teams, 4-0 against the spread when fading home dogs from the AFC East or the NFC East.
All right, well, first off, I think this is kind of just sheer randomness, to be honest, breaking it down the divisions this way. But at the same time, the East in both conferences are not exactly the greatest from top to bottom in terms of the four teams. So seeing them not cover point spreads as dogs at home isn't too surprising. The idea this week, though, with all these 7.5s on them, is it's making it really tricky to follow through with continuing to fade them now that there's 7.5s pretty much on all three of those games. The Jets, the Eagles, and I know the Patriots is approaching 7. So I wouldn't necessarily be running to follow this trend this week, especially from a pure numbers perspective. 7.5, taking 7.5 points in the NFL is something I'll always. It won't take a lot of convincing to get me on that side if it does make sense. Here, I have a hard time thinking the Jets. Well, you won't find me on the Jets for sure. I've been totally off. I thought they'd be losing games 31-17, not 31-0. So I'm taking a break with just collecting data on them. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tricky week for this trend to continue.
Now, also, Matt, to go back to it, the four teams that have lost so far at home from the East divisions as an underdog, the Giants in Week 1 against the Broncos, they were blown out. The Eagles in Week 2 against San Francisco, they hung in that game, but the Niners eventually won. The Dolphins got blown out by the Bills, and the Jets were destroyed by the Patriots. So you've had 3 or 4 blowouts, but also, if I'm not mistaken, none of them have been higher than a 6-point dog, which was the Jets against the Patriots. The other 3, the Eagles were getting 3 against San Francisco. Dolphins were getting 3.5 against Buffalo, and the Giants were getting 3 against Denver. So it is a major step up now with the spread.
Well, I mean, the bump up in the spread makes sense because of those results, right? Because they were expected to be close, at least within one score, let's say a field goal or so. In these spreads, 6 and less, and they got blown. 3 of the 4 of them got blown out. So I mean, it makes sense the big jump to these touchdown spreads, but at the same time, laying 7.5 on the road is not something I'm keen to do any year. So I don't know. It's a tricky spot this week.
Is there one of the three, the Buccaneers, the Titans, and the Chiefs? Is there one of the three you feel the best about laying the points?
That would be the Chiefs. If you can get 7, if you buy it to a flat 7 or less, I just think the Chiefs offensively they're still going to put up points, and I just don't think Philly would keep up in that kind of game. And the only path to a Philly cover I see is really kind of a sloppy game, either from Kansas City's own offense or Philly's defense mucks it up with a few turnovers, forcing a few turnovers themselves, runs the ball like all day and continues to move the chains. And I just don't I have a tough time seeing that happen as well. So.
All right, now let's look at the not now, and that would be 4-10 against the spread when fading home dogs from the other 6 divisions. And you mentioned, Ray, Jacksonville is 0-2 as a home dog, but these home dogs have actually fared pretty well that are not from the East.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it speaks to the parity in the other divisions for the most part too, right? Like these teams, like say the Bengals are in there or at least once, and so on. There's a bunch of teams that are on the up and up, or at least they hope they're on the up and up in these other divisions, and they're actually outperforming these home dog lines. So it does make sense to me, and this is something I would think could continue at least in the next few weeks before teams really start to take full, like their identities take full shape.
Now, the other teams this would apply to, Atlanta's a short dog against Washington. Minnesota is a short dog against Cleveland. And, out of those, do you have any good feel with either of those two as far as having faith in the Vikings or Falcons?
I didn't know Atlanta opened as a favorite, no?
Yeah, they did,
okay.
And now it's flipped. Yeah, Washington's now
okay.
1.5 point favorite.
I actually don't mind Minnesota for the most part. I get the argument that it's basically the same spread as last week against Seattle, and Cleveland is arguably better than Seattle. But at the same time, like Cleveland was 3-5 against the number on the road last year with no fans, and I'm not sure. And their only road game this year was that week 1 game against Kansas City where they, I don't know if you want to say coughed it up, but they lost late. So I'm not entirely sure that I'm ready to back Cleveland on the road, and I would prefer to fade them with anything.
Now let's take a look at your Total Talk piece, which you could find at VegasInsider.com. And I found this very interesting, Matt. Teams with a turnover margin of +3 or more are 4-1 to the under the next week on their team totals. So it's basically they took advantage of the turnovers that one game. Then the next week, their offense just fails to show up or doesn't put up the same results.
Well, it's more of a thing where I think conceptually it makes sense to me because the point totals they're putting up in the games they're getting all these turnovers are generally going to be higher than if they just had one possession, back and forth, right? So because of that, and because not everything, but a lot of the lines are based off what we saw last, that these numbers, these team totals, and even these totals be like, oh, this so-and-so put up 30-plus points last week, forgetting that 10 of them were off gimme turnovers or whatnot, and then the total team totals become up 27, 28 points when they should really be a field goal less or so.
Now, here are the teams it applies to, Matt. Chargers, Saints, Colts, Cardinals, and Bills. Out of the 5, the only team that lost was Indianapolis against Tennessee. But when you see these teams, the Chargers have a high total against the Raiders on Monday night. Arizona against the Rams, and the Rams have owned them over the years. That's a high total. They have a low total with the Giants and Saints. They play their home opener this week, New Orleans. But out of those, who do you have the most confidence in to keep that trend going to stay under their team total?
The team totals. I mean, there's a few I put in the article. The Saints, for one, I think 26.5 is a little bit too high for them. Buffalo is the other one, 33.5 at the time I wrote this. That game feels like 30-13, 30-10 all day. Buffalo just runs the ball into the ground in the second half to me. And the Chargers, the Chargers under 28.5 is another one. I put those three in because I actually went back and looked at just last year. Last year I know was totally different with no fans and all the different dynamics to the season. But teams that had 3+ turnovers last year ended up averaging 27.03 points for the whole year. I know I talked about 24 as the barrier in that piece, but I was curious about what it would be for a full year, and the fact that it was only 27 in a league where scoring is generally going up every year by 1.5 2 points, whatever it is. Anything around 27.5 right now, I'd look to take the under with these team totals with the teams that fall in this spot.
So, Matt, you feel good about the Saints under 26.5 that back the Superdome for the first time this season?
Yeah, I don't really factor that much into my. I mean, there'll be a boost, obviously, for sure, but I still don't. I mean, Jameis Winston hasn't thrown for. I mean, he's barely throwing the ball down the field, so I'm not sure how they put up a bunch of points without turnovers. I mean, they've been on this list twice already after week 1, and now this week, and the game in between, they scored 7 points. So.
Yeah, and the Saints team, they again, they've just been very up and down so far. But I guess the only good news for the Saints is they face a quarterback in Daniel Jones, who, I mean, I don't even want to say erratic. I mean, they haven't won a game yet. So the Giants, we'll see what they do going down to the Superdome. But I do find that interesting, though, that these teams that they benefit off the turnovers and they don't do well the next game. The last one I'll leave you with is the Chargers, because 28.5 is their team total. Game total is 53, +4 against Kansas City. Obviously, a huge win against the Chiefs. And look, it's another huge game against the Raiders this week on Monday night. But you think that Herbert and the Chargers take a step back offensively?
I wouldn't necessarily say take a step back. I think it could land 28, and that's fine. I think this game, along with the Arizona Rams game, is one of these games or 2 games this week where these teams that were expected to improve this year, they're both. I think they've all 3 and oh no, our Chargers are 2-1, but they've all had winning starts to their season, right? So now they're in division game. Both of them are division games for one, and these are the ones that are trying to take that next leap to pass the incumbent, I guess, if you're the Chargers in Vegas. And I still do believe the primetime games are gonna hit an underrun eventually here. So it makes sense to me that this Chargers Vegas game can keep climbing, and I'll look to take the Chargers team total under and the full game under as well.
Yeah, we've only had 1 under in primetime so far, which is amazing. That Panthers-Texans game last week. And any thoughts before I let you go on the Jacksonville-Cincinnati game for Thursday?
No, I still think Urban Meyer's over his head, but again, I don't like. I can't trust the Bengals laying more than a touchdown. It's just as simple as that for me. On a short week, I don't know. These games, I'm not. And teams that are win totals under 500, I'm really not always that interested in.
Yeah, and Cincinnati, the other thing with them, too, is I just wonder how they're going to respond off the Pittsburgh win. That's a huge win. They don't win at Pittsburgh normally. I don't care how much the Steelers have dropped off. It's still a huge win for them. And they get the Packers next week. So Jacksonville in between. It's a tough spot. But again,
it could be a sleepy spot for the Bengals, too. I mean, that's a big number. They could easily win the game and not cover as well. So if Lawrence starts protecting the football, I mean, the points for the results are going to show for this team.
I agree. And your Ottawa Red Blacks had a big win last night at Redmonton. They finally got in the win column.
Well, I'm actually closer to Toronto than Ottawa, but yeah, that was Tuesday Night Football. I was dead wrong on that game. Ottawa started 2 rookie quarterbacks in tandem, pretty much, that just lit it up from the start. So.
They finally got one. So the Elks, they're struggling too, but that's a good win for Ottawa. A win's a win, I guess.
Win's a win in a short season.
I know, yes. Well, it's Winnipeg and everyone else right now, and it feels like in that league.
Well, I put a future in on Montreal a few weeks ago, so we'll see what happens.
You know what? The best team doesn't always win, so you never know when he gets to the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And you only got to win. You just got to win a couple games in the CFL. It's not like you win. I mean, if you win the division, you're in the semifinals already. So
see how it goes. Matt Blunt, you can find his work at VegasInsider.com. He's got his total talk up for this week, a lot of good angles, and also hot and not, which he produces every week as well. Matt, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
All right, there is Matt Blunt, and got a little bit of CFL talk in there. The Ottawa Red Blacks, who have had some struggles, or a lot of struggles this year, they finally won a game last night. The Tuesday night special against the Elks of Edmonton. They changed their name this year to the Elks now, not the Eskimos anymore. So want to get to some baseball, but we're only going to look at 6 games. We're not going to go over all of them because you have a lot of meaningless matchups. I know that it's on the board. You can bet on it, but a lot of meaningless matchups in Major League Baseball with teams that are eliminated. But there are 6 games I've isolated that still have meaning to them. And the only one I didn't put in that has meaning to is the Giants and Diamondbacks. San Francisco still leads the National League West. Again, they haven't clinched the division yet. The St. Louis Cardinals, who right now, we'll start with them, they won their 17th straight game last night, and they beat the Milwaukee Brewers. Cardinals are now in the playoffs, which is crazy that the Cardinals have won 17 consecutive games, and they're in the playoffs. But again, if St. Louis wins 22 in a row and loses that first playoff game, it doesn't matter. It's all over with. But the run St. Louis is on is unbelievable, and they continue their series with Milwaukee tonight. St. Louis has beaten Milwaukee now in the last 5 matchups. They swept them at American Family Field last week. They beat them last night 6-2. Adam Wainwright. There's so many pitchers in the National League that are having great seasons, but yet aren't going to win the Cy Young, which is a shame. You can't give out 10 Cy Youngs. But Max Scherzer, who we'll talk about in a second because he pitches tonight for the Dodgers, there are so many pitchers having fantastic seasons, mainly in the National League, or had career years, but they're not going to get recognized for it, which is fine. But even a guy like Adam Wainwright, who you wouldn't have thought would be the ace of the Cardinals staff, he's 17-7 with a 3.05 ERA. And I know that wins and losses really don't mean as much anymore, but I believe the number is 12-2 the Cardinals are in Wainwright's last 14 starts. He's been amazing for them. They've won 17 straight. They have a few more with the Brewers. Then they play the Cubs this weekend at Busch. And the Cardinals can obviously sweep the Cubs. But you go into today's matchup, and it's Miles Mikolas, who actually beat the Brewers last time he faced them 10-2. Back last Wednesday, 7 innings, 2 earned runs, his best start by far of the season. And the Cardinals have won his last 3 starts. So he takes the mound opposite Adrian Hauser, who was staked a 5-0 lead. He pitched well. The bullpen melted down when he faced St. Louis last week, an 8-5 loss. That was the game. That was the getaway day game in Milwaukee. 5-0 lead. Hauser went 6 innings, gave up an earned run. And the Brewers still end up losing 8-5, but Hauser has still been very good this year for the Brewers. Milwaukee's got a dynamic starting rotation. They at least will have several games to play in the divisional series. They're not one and done. The Cardinals could be one and done, but the Brewers, though, they've had their issues with St. Louis. The Phillies and the Braves, they meet in Atlanta. Phillies had a shot last night. They were down 2-0 in the 9th. They got 1 run on a sacrifice fly, but just couldn't get that second run across. And the Braves now are starting to slowly sneak away from the Phillies. Philadelphia hung, but they're 3.5 back, the Phillies, with the Braves have 6 to play. The Phillies have 5 to play. It's gonna be a very tough mountain to climb if you're the Phillies. But look, they lost a few times to the Pirates this past weekend. You can only blame yourself if you're the Phillies. But tonight it's Aaron Nola and Max Fried on the mound. Fried has been dynamic too. Another guy that is not going to be a Cy Young winner. He got up to a not so great start to the season. When you look back at Max Fried, his numbers weren't good. He gave up 14 earned runs his first 3 starts of the season. since his last 2 starts against the Giants and Padres on the road, no earned runs in 16 innings of work. I mean, he's been outstanding for the Braves. This is the guy they thought that would be their ace this year. So the Braves continue to roll. Aaron Nola, who has not had a great season, even though he's still a pretty good pitcher, he is coming off a 6 earned run outing against the Pirates his last time out. And even against the Braves this year, Nola's been a little shaky. At home, he's pitched well. On the road, not so much. He had a tough outing at Atlanta earlier in the year. So it's been up and down against the Braves. And Atlanta is such a stacked lineup when you look at the teams remaining in the National League. And we know how good the Dodgers are. The Giants, I mean, the Braves lineup is better than the Giants lineup. And then you have Milwaukee, who depends on their pitching. And you have St. Louis, who's kind of a good balance. But Atlanta's lineup is just so completely stacked right now. And you just kind of wonder if they're going to have enough pitching to make a run to the World Series. They're up 3-1 on the Dodgers last year and couldn't hold it. But also, if they face the Dodgers again, you got to take on Max Scherzer. And that is not going to be an easy task for anybody, really. You know, Max Scherzer, who it's either he or Corbin Burns will win the Cy Young from Milwaukee. But Scherzer's numbers are unbelievable. Remember, he got lit up by the Braves on opening day with the Nationals. Kind of wonder if he was shot or not. He's 15-4, 2.28 ERA. Dodgers have not lost any one of Max Scherzer's starts so far this season. Last time he faced the Padres earlier this month, 8-0 win, 8 innings, 1 hit, 9 strikeouts, no walks. And in fact, the last 2 times, or the 2 times he's faced the Padres, here's something interesting. So he faced San Diego twice as a member of the Nationals, gave up 11 earned runs in 10 2/3 innings of work. He faced the Padres twice now at the Dodgers. He has not allowed a run yet in those 2 starts. So Scherzer continues to be just unbelievable right now. And San Diego is now below 500. Think about that they were playing so well. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. San Diego was there for a while. They were in the playoff race. Nobody thought San Francisco would do what they did. So the Giants passed the Padres easily. And then San Diego's pitching could never come around, and they just could never get over that hump that they were there for the wild card behind the Dodgers. But then all these other teams started playing better, and San Diego fell off. And San Diego went from being a potential playoff team this year to maybe finishing under 500 when it's all said and done. They faced the Dodgers a few more times than the Giants. So it doesn't get any easier. They had this brutal schedule to close out the season where they faced no teams with a losing record, I believe. That San Diego used up all their games with Arizona and with Colorado. When you look and see what the Padres have done recently, they faced the Dodgers, the Braves, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Dodgers, the Giants. They had 2 with the Angels, the Astros, and then before that, they played Arizona to close out August. So their September schedule was freaking brutal. And they still took 2 of 3 from Houston. They still split a series with San Francisco. But San Diego, though, they had problems at Colorado this year. They had that series. They lost 3 or 4 at Arizona where they got no hit in one of those games. It all adds up. It does. Now let's take a look at the few games of the American League. The Red Sox, a great job by them last night. So they got swept by the Yankees at home. Then they go to Baltimore and put up a complete egg. They lose 4-2 to the Orioles. They had 3 hits in the entire game, Boston. So the Red Sox right now, as of this moment, they are a half game up on Seattle for the second wild card spot in the American League. Yankees up 2 on Boston. The Yankees have won 7 straight. So they've caught fire at the right time. Seattle just keeps playing Oakland, and they're going to keep winning. Toronto's hanging around 1 back. Oakland's 3.5 back. Time is definitely running out on them, and Oakland can only blame themselves at this point. But the Red Sox they may not end up being in the playoffs when it's all said and done. They got to take care of their business against Baltimore, and then they get Washington this weekend. So, the Red Sox, I mean, come on, you're playing two last-place teams. You can't be losing these games. So the Red Sox are a heavy favorite tonight, laying 250. Nathan Eovaldi takes the mound for Boston. And Eovaldi, who was great at home this year, got lit up his last time out against the Yankees, gave up 7 earned runs in less than 3 innings of work. Eovaldi's ERA, 4.62 on the road. And I don't trust teams like this that are laying these big numbers that aren't winning. I'm not saying grab Baltimore, but I don't have faith in Boston right now. So the Yankees and Blue Jays, they meet up in Toronto. And the Yankees, they actually, it's really unbelievable with this team how they have played so well. Giancarlo Stanton had a monster home run last night for New York, and they pulled away in that game against the Blue Jays. And Toronto's still there in the wild card race, but New York's won 7 straight. And they have Garrett Cole taking the mound tonight opposite Jose Barrios. Minnesota beat Toronto a few times this past weekend. The Blue Jays have dropped 4 of 6. So, look, the good thing about the Yankees is that they had that long winning streak, and then they had that long losing stretch, and now they're back winning 7 straight. It almost feels like they had their losing streak at the good time, at the right time, because they still were able to make it all up. And they taking care of the Red Sox. That's what you need to do. When you look at the teams right by you, and if you're not beating them and you lose out by 2 or 3 games, that's what you could point at. And that's the situation with the Red Sox as opposed to the Yankees, who are playing very well and beating the teams that are right tied with them or right behind them. And I know they only get a few series with Seattle and with Oakland, but teams like the Red Sox and Blue Jays are beating. Now, Barrios, first time he's a home underdog since he got traded to the Blue Jays. So keep that in mind. Also, Barrios beat the Yankees in the Bronx a few weeks ago. So he pitched well against them. Garrett Cole goes for New York tonight. And Cole's coming off a really good start against Boston. First time he's pitching at Rogers Center this year. He's beaten the Blue Jays twice on the road, but one was in Dunedin, Florida. The other was in Buffalo. So first time he's pitching at Rogers Center in front of real fans, unlike in those other places. Didn't have fake fans, just didn't have, wasn't the same kind of atmosphere necessarily. So the final game of the night, we'll look at the Rays and the Astros as they meet up in Houston tonight. And the Rays, they're coming off a loss to Houston last night in which, look, Tampa Bay is still going to end up being the top seed in the American League. They had just swept the Marlins, but they drop a 4-3 decision. They were up 2-0 out of the gate and just couldn't put it together towards the end. Michael Wacha actually pitched really well. That's a shame. 5 scoreless innings, 6 strikeouts. And the Rays end up losing that game. So Houston, they come back home after getting swept by Oakland. And the Astros, they are getting closer to winning the American League West. They're up 4.5 on Seattle with, 5 to play. So they're basically knocking on the door of winning the West title. And then Seattle and Oakland, they play later on tonight. And Oakland's lost 11 straight to Seattle. You want to know why you're not in the playoffs? That reason. And if Seattle ends up missing the playoffs, look, you got the Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays all around you. But Seattle 88-70, very impressive season for them. I know the Giants have been talked about so much, but the Mariners right behind them as far as impressive seasons coming out of nowhere. So let's take a look now before we get out of here. Our friends at WynnBET. And WynnBET, they give you this $1,000 risk-free first bet when you sign up on the app. Download the app at iOS or Android on those devices. and you have the opportunity to have a $1,000 risk-free bet. Now, how do you do it? You download the WinBet mobile sportsbook app. You get a $1,000 risk-free first bet. That means if you lose your first wager, you get it back up to $1,000 as a free bet credit that you can use for another bet. And WinBet is legal in the following states: Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, and Arizona. You must be 21 years or older to wager. And check out the WinBet sports app today. I am Kevin Rogers. We'll be back with you coming up tomorrow at noon. In case you missed any of the show, you can find it at VegasInsider.com all day or on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider. Also, you could find my best bet for Jacksonville and Cincinnati on our YouTube channel as well. And we'll have more best bet videos later in the week. We have Pats and the Buccaneers Sunday night, Tom Brady's return to Foxborough, as well as the Monday night game between the Raiders and Chargers out in LA. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching today's edition of the Daily Insider. My thanks to Matt Blunt for joining us as well. And as always, best of luck with your bets.